The sand remembered when Nexar-7 drew breath. Once the planet had pulsed with terraformers, arrogance, great machines that exhaled oceans into cracked basins and coaxed forests from silicon soil. But the atmosphere curdled. The forests combusted, leaving skeletal canyons. The oceans evaporated, their ghosts lingering as salt veins in the dunes. Now Nexar-7's only harvest was silence, broken by the snarl of rover bikes and the whispered commerce of warlords. They called themselves reclaimers, poets of ruin, scavengers who peeled relics from the dead planet's ribs and sold them to off-world syndicates. The dust dogs hunted these men not for justice, but because war paid better than regret. Their reputation was a feral thing, mercenaries who could thread a sandstorm's needle, who left no tracks, no witnesses, no questions. But the dunes kept ledgers. A month before the cicada drone vanished, a whisper snaked through the black markets. The warlord of Sector 9 had dug up something older than terraformers, darker than profit. Not a relic, but a pattern, a neural code etched into fossilized server cores. Buyers clamored. The dust dogs' employer tripled their fee. Only the sand knew what bloomed in Sector 9's labs, how the code unspooled into living flesh, how it turned hollow-eyed children into perfect equations, their minds scrubbed of fear, their bodies rewired to carry death as lightly as a sigh. The humans did not know, yet, that mercy had a half-life. That redemption required more than bullets. But the sand remembered. And when the dust dogs rode into the storm wall that day, their engines singing a hymn of rust and reckoning, the dunes shifted. As if turning a page. Chapter 1. Nexar-7. The wind screamed. Not the hollow, grieving wail of Earth's storms, but a predator's shriek, flensing dunes to bone dust. Taryn Vosk adjusted her goggles, the lenses already pitted by sand. Her rover bike hummed beneath her, a half-ton of rusted armor and spite. The dust dogs fanned out behind her, 12 silhouettes smudged against the ochre haze. Their sand camouflage armor rippled, mimicking the terrain, a gift from a client who had paid them in corpses. She did not glance at the holomap projected on her wrist. The coordinates were carved into her marrow. 30 clicks southeast, the warlord's compound festered like a cyst under the skin of the desert. Cicada, their intel drone, had vanished there 6 hours ago. Its last transmission looped in her skull, thermal signatures inconsistent with adult physiology. The sand shifted, not the wind's doing. Zev Kethran's rover slid alongside hers, his posture loose, almost insolent. He wore his helmet tipped back, exposing a face all angles and shadow. A scar bisected his left brow, too precise to be shrapnel. His eyes, the gray of dead satellites, tracked the horizon. "You are certain the data core is worth this?" His voice was a dry thing, stripped of urgency. Taryn throttled her engine louder. She did not need his doubt. Not after the briefing, the way he had leaned against the hangar wall, picking apart her plan with surgeon's fingers. The compound is a mousetrap. Cicada's encryption will hold. Let it burn. But Cicada knew things, coordinates, names, her brother's voice archived in its black box. "The drone is not negotiable," she said. Zev's gloved hand flexed, a tick she had noticed. He did it when equations spiraled behind his eyes. "There are variables you have not considered." "Enlighten me." He opened his mouth, then exhaled a laugh sharp enough to draw blood. "No, you would not believe me." The dog's comms crackled. Movement, West Ridge. Taryn raised a fist. The unit halted, engines idling. Sand settled, revealing tracks, not rover treads but boot prints, small, staggered. Zev dismounted, knelt. His fingers hovered above a print. "A child," he said. "Impossible." The warlords culled non-combatants. Nexar-7's oases ran with orphan blood. He stood, brushing grit from his knees. you assume they are victims. The compound. The walls were rib bones, fossilized, some long-dead Leviathan skeleton repurposed into watchtowers. Taryn crouched in a sandstone blind, binoculars etching the compound into her retinas. No sentries, no heat blooms, just the wind chewing at sun-bleached banners. Zev's breath fogged her helmet mic. A mousetrap, he repeated. She silenced him with a gesture. Her brother's ghost leaned over her shoulder, whispering, "You hesitate too much, Taryn. Hesitation is a debt paid in bodies." They breached the east gate with shaped charges. The blast was a dull thud, swallowed by the desert. Inside, the air stank of fermented algae and burnt copper. The dogs advanced, rifles sweeping empty corridors. Cicada hung in the central chamber, suspended by biofilament wires. Its carapace had been peeled open, exposing the data core, a gutted thing. "Lure worked," muttered Rask, her demolitions lead. "Let us grab the core and frag this hellhole." Taryn approached, her boots crunched syringes, ampules of neural accelerant, stamped with a winged serpent logo. Her nape prickled. The warlord of Sector 9 favored that symbol. Intel claimed he had been glassed a year ago. A whimper. She turned, the chamber's far wall shimmered, a hologram fraying at the edges. Behind it, a cell. Children. 8, perhaps 10, all under 12 standard years. They wore soiled smocks, collars bolted to their throats. Their eyes were wrong, no dilation, no blink reflex, glass marbles set in wax faces. Zev froze, his hand twitched toward his sidearm, aborted. "Suicide rigs," Rask hissed. "Neural bombs, see the ports." He pointed at the implants jacked into their cervical spines. Taryn's stomach inverted. The youngest girl clutched a doll made of wire and reactor tape. Its head lolled, neck snapped. Zev stepped forward. "Do not engage," Taryn ordered. He did not listen. Crouched before the girl, he produced a micro-tool from his belt. His fingers danced across her collar. A click. The bomb's status lead flickered from red to dormant green. The dogs' rifles snapped up. Kethran, Taryn's voice could flay paint. "Explain." He stood slow. "The trigger is dual sequence, remote and autonomic. They rigged the failsafe to adrenal spikes." "How do you know this?" A smile cut his face. "I wrote the code." Sand roared, not the wind, engines. The compound's gates imploded. A war horn bellowed, 3 descending notes. Sector 9's anthem. Zev met her stare. "The variables," he said. "Retreat." They fought like damned souls. Rover bikes screamed through the compound's arteries, dogs laying down suppressive fire. Zev rode tandem with Taryn, one arm clamped around her waist, the other jury-rigging a beacon. His thighs pressed against hers, heat bleeding through armor. She should dump him, let the sand take his secrets. But he had saved the girl. The warlord's sandship rose from the dunes, a leviathan of riveted iron. Its belly disgorged skiffs, riders in serpent-marked cloaks. Plasma fire scarred the air. "Jump left," Zev barked. She obeyed. A grenade cratered their previous path. He tossed the beacon. It stuck to a skiff's hull. Detonate it. She hesitated. The skiff pilot was bare-armed, smooth-faced. "They are not children," Zev said. "Not anymore." She triggered the charge. The fireball tasted of copper. The bunker. Safe for now. The dog's underground outpost hummed with recycled air and festering glances. Taryn stood in the armory, scrubbing Cicada's data core with solvent. Her brother's voice waited inside. Zev leaned in the doorway. Blood seeped through his field dressing. a skiff's shrapnel souvenir. "You knew," she said. "Oh, yes. You lied. Omission is not deception." She hurled a wrench. It clanged off the bulkhead. He did not flinch. "They were children," she said. "They were equations." He limped closer. "The warlord wanted fear. I gave him efficiency. A bomb that hesitates is worthless." "You are worse than him." He caught her wrist. His grip burned. "No, I am what happens when monsters outsource their conscience." She wrenched free. Why disable the girl's collar? His gaze fractured. For a heartbeat, he looked human. "You would have left her." "Oh, yes. Liars." He left. The core's playback button glowed. She did not press it. Outside, the wind screamed. It sounded almost like mercy. Chapter 2. The outpost drew breath, or so it seemed to Taryn Vosk, its ribbed metal walls expanding and contracting with the groan of overburdened air filters. Buried beneath 30 meters of compacted silica, the dust dog's refuge existed in perpetual twilight, the only illumination bleeding from flickering biolume strips. The scent of recycled sweat and ionized steel clung to every surface, a testament to the unit's years of occupation. Taryn sat at the war table, Cicada's data core glowing faintly before her, its fractured light casting jagged shadows across the holographic map of Sector 9. Zev Kethran leaned against the far wall, his silhouette carved from the same shadows that pooled in the hollows of his collarbone. Blood had dried in a rust-colored seam along his left temple, a memento from their retreat. He studied the skeletal remains of a neural bomb collar disassembled on the table, his fingers twitching as though tracing equations in the air. The children's faces haunted the space between them, waxen skin, empty eyes. Taryn's fingers tightened around a salvaged EMP coil, its cold weight a feeble anchor. She could still feel the tremor in the youngest girl's pulse when she had carried her to the extraction rover, the child's body light as a bird carcass. Zev lifted the collars in her casing, exposing a nest of biowire. "The trigger mechanism is fractal," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "Each bomb is both independent and networked. Disable one, and the system recalculates detonation thresholds for the remainder." Taryn did not look up. "You designed this." "I designed a scaffold for neural repair." The warlord grafted explosives to it. He set the casing down with surgical precision. "They are puppets. The strings just happen to be made of serotonin and shrapnel." Her thumb brushed the playback button on Cicada's core. "Do not," she commanded herself. Her brother's voice would drown her, and she could not afford to sink, not with Zev's gaze dissecting her every hesitation. He pushed away from the wall, limping slightly. The shrapnel wound beneath his field dressing had begun to fester, a fact he ignored with the same indifference he showed the dog's venomous stares. There is a way to blanket disable the system, an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to overload their implants' receptors. "And kill them. And free them." He placed a modified detonator chip on the table. The pulse would sever the warlord's control. The bombs remain, but inert. She imagined the children waking, their hands pressed to the hollows of their throats where the collars had sung them lullabies of annihilation. How large a pulse? 500-meter radius requires a fusion core. Rask's laughter barked from the doorway. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, his scarred knuckles gleaming in the biolume's pallor. Only one fusion core in the region, mounted on a warlord's supply hauler, which, if memory serves, is guarded by 20 armored psychopaths and a drone swarm. Zev's smile was a scalpel's edge. "Then we will improvise." "The dunes." They rode at twilight when the desert held its breath. The sky bled indigo and ochre, the sun a sullen ember half swallowed by the horizon. Taryn led the column, her rover's engine muffled to a whisper. Zev rode behind her, his body a tense echo of her movements. The dogs had protested his inclusion, but necessity bridled their distrust. Only he could recalibrate the EMP. The convoy's heat signature pulsed on Taryn's wrist display. 3 haulers, their plated hulls scabbed with rust. Drones flitted overhead, black mites against the bruised sky. Zev's breath warmed her ear. The lead hauler carries the core. Disable the rear engines first. Create a barricade. She nodded, her throat tight. His proximity unnerved her, not for its intimacy, but for the way it sharpened her awareness of her own isolation. She had commanded the dogs for 7 years, her authority a carapace. Zev had cracked it in a week. The attack unfolded as a silent ballet. Rask's team unleashed EMP chaff, the drones spiraling into the sand like wounded insects. Taryn's rover surged forward, cutting between the haulers. Plasma fire seared the air, but the dust dogs moved as one organism, a storm of grit and vengeance. Zev leapt onto the lead hauler's running board, his fingers dancing across the access panel. The hatch hissed open, revealing the fusion core's cobalt heart. He mouthed numbers as he worked, a litany against chaos. Taryn covered him, her rifle's report syncopated with the thrum of her pulse. A skirmisher lunged from the hauler's cab, machete raised. She fired. The body crumpled, young, smooth-cheeked beneath the helmet. Zev staggered as the hauler swerved. A grenade arced toward them. Down, Taryn tackled him behind the core's housing. The blast scorched the air, shrapnel embedding in the bulkhead where his skull had been. He stared up at her, his breath ragged. "That is twice you have saved me." "Do not make it thrice." She hauled him upright, her gloves slipping on his blood-slick arm. The core came loose with a metallic scream. Zev cradled it like a stillborn star, his face lit with something akin to reverence. "Now we run." The bunker again. Night deepened. The core sat dismembered on the war table, its innards spilling fractal light. Zev worked without sleep, his hands steady but his eyes fever-bright. Taryn watched him trace circuits with a soldering needle, the movements precise yet haunted. He had not spoken of the skirmisher she had killed, but she saw the boy's face in the tremors of Zev's jaw, in the way his gaze snagged on the empty cell where the rescued girl had lain before the medics took her. "You blame me," she said. He did not pause. "You did what was necessary." "And you." The soldering iron hissed. "I have not earned the right to judge." She stepped closer. The air hummed between them, charged with ozone and unspoken words. His collar was undone, revealing a scar that mirrored the children's implant sites. She wondered if it ached. "Why did you stay?" The question escaped without permission. "After the compound, you could have fled."
This story continues. Subscribe to our channel, like the video, and listen to the rest.